I think flat deck boxes are the future. I've said that before and I maintain that. They are compact, they're sturdy, and they feel much better to hold in your hands than their cubic counterparts. And this flat deck box is the next step to that flattened out future. But what does this flat deck box have that the other ones I've reviewed, what do they not have? That, my friends, can be answered with the press of a button. Welcome to Absolute Cardboard. Today we'll be taking a look at the QuickDraw, a 3D printed deck box from Just Fray Things on Etsy. It runs about $35 at the time of production, and it comes in a wide variety of colors and has a couple different sizing options, which we'll get to later. And for full disclosure, this box was provided to me for review by the designer, with the full awareness that my review would still be my honest opinion. So without further ado, let's take a look at the QuickDraw. The QuickDraw is a flat 3D printed deck box, like I mentioned before. It has a window groove like most 3D printed deck boxes that I have reviewed, and it is generally built for use with Magic the Gathering Commander decks, which means about 100 single-sleeved cards. Now, it's a bit thicker than I would prefer my flat deck boxes to be, but not by much. The official specs are as follows. It weighs 253 grams, it is about 171 millimeters wide, 103 millimeters tall, and has a depth of about 48 millimeters, more or less, and we'll discuss that a little bit in the future. But for now, let's talk about the elephant in the room, which is this gold button. When you press the button, the top automatically opens, thus living up to the moniker of QuickDraw. Now, this mechanism is very fun. I often mention how fidgety something is in my reviews because I am a fidgeter, and I do think that accessories like deck boxes should be fun, but not at the expense of doing what a deck box should be doing, which is storing and protecting your playing cards. So I am pleased to say that not only is this QuickDraw mechanism very fun, it also makes this deck box very secure. Let me show you how. With the lid off, we can see that pressing the button actually just moves this little knob along that little track. It's spring-loaded, so when you press in, it automatically shoots back out. Now, the second part of this is in the lid itself. You can see that it has this cutout right there, and the way that it works is that the knob on the main body of the box will slide along this edge until the lid is in place, then lodge itself back into this rounded section. In this demonstration, you'll see that as I slide the lid on, the button will kind of press itself as that knob gets pushed into the little nook. And when that happens, that little knob is stuck in that cutout, and it makes a very, very strong locking part of the lid. Like, this thing isn't going to open for anything short of an act of God. I mean, like, look at this. This is crazy. Oh, I ruined the sleeve. The fact that the lid has these little springs to kind of kick the lid off when you press the button is just fun. Having spring-loaded stuff is cool. They could have chosen not to put those in which case you would press the button and just kind of slide it open, but having the spring-loaded action is a plus in my book. Now, as for the lid being spring-loaded, I should warn you that if you happen to open this box while it's angled a little bit, the lid will literally slide all the way off onto the table or ground or what have you. Now, back to the deck box as a whole. I quite like the aesthetic design of it, especially when you consider that the looks of it also end up having a function. For example, when I was holding the deck box to show the lid flying off, I was holding it by these rounded grooves. And for a flat style deck box, I really like that. It's kind of reminiscent of those old cameras having grips so that it's easier to wield. And even these cool chevrons, they serve a purpose. The lid can use them as grips to force the box shut, and the lines on the side can be used to hold the deck on the ground while you lift cards out. These are minor things in general and not really impactful for a lot of people. But look, a lot of us are maybe getting up there in age, or you may have some older friends who play and, they have arthritis, or even they just maybe have motor function issues. And those people deserve to have cool deck boxes too. So I'm all for these kind of random grooves and lines that actually help people actually use the deck box. This hole doesn't have any kind of particular function. But I did confirm with the designer that this was mostly an aesthetic choice. He mentioned you could use it on something like a pegboard. My mind immediately went to like a wrist strap, like you would see on those old kind of cameras, like a rangefinder style. And when you think about it, a lot of these flat deck boxes kind of look like the old rangefinder style of cameras, which is probably why I love them so much. Now, one aspect I'm not a super fan of is what I call the art window. Most of the times you'll have a slot for a top loader or maybe even a snap case, but not here. Here you can only really get a single sleeve card in there. Now, if you look at the official listing on Etsy for this, you'll see that the suggestion is that this deck box be used for pre-constructed decks, or you can actually cut the pre-constructed deck box that comes with the pre-constructed deck, and it has that art on the side, and that will actually fit here in this window. Which makes sense. The deck box and the window are already aligned horizontally, and that side panel from the pre-con boxes is also pre-aligned to be horizontal. In a way, it's kind of clever. For me, I prefer having an art card in there because it's already aligned horizontally, but some commanders don't have art cards, and you'll have to make the judgment if it's worth it to you to put your commander in there or not. And, something like Cranko Mob Boss, like that seems fine to risk, but something like Angus McKenzie, probably not. The last feature on this deck box itself is the groove on the backside, right here, which is just kind of empty and it's just there, but each deck box comes with one of these housings that holds 2 discs. And if you want, you can slide that housing right into the back of the deck box. The lid will still shut and everything else. Why would you want to add this extra bulgy thing to this deck box? Well, the housing is actually, and I'm using this phrase a lot, but I do feel like it's warranted, this housing is actually really clever. The 2 discs are held in with magnets, and to pop them out, you press the bottom of each disc. When the discs are out, you can see they attach to make a life counter. One disc has protrusions and the other one has indentation, so when you set your life, the dial won't turn haphazardly. It's not bad, actually. It's a pretty good size. And if you want, you can set the housing face down and use this little cutout between the extrusions to actually hold the life counter in place. It seems a bit extra, but then again, I like things that are a bit extra. And actually, I set this life counter into the groove and I gave it a good shake. And to its credit, the life counter doesn't actually roll over unless you really jostle that housing. The housing itself is actually just really well designed, on itself. It uses the fact that the life counters need opposite magnetic polarities to stick to each other. So each part of the housing is magnetically tied to a specific disc. If you try to put it in the wrong hole, the magnets will prevent it and kind of push it out. Which is unlike your mother, whose motto is there is no wrong hole. Additionally, the holes have these little slopes, which allow you to push the bottoms. It'll kind of prop the disc on its side, and then you can easily get the discs out. If you press on the top, nothing will happen. And I'm not too proud to admit, when I first got this deck box, it took me half an hour to figure out how to get the discs out. I was using tweezers and a knife to just try to pry them out. So when I said earlier that this deck box was about 48 millimeters deep, more or less, it's because this does add some thickness to the body, upping the space needed depth-wise to 64 millimeters. But there is nothing forcing you to keep the housing on the deck. So if you just want to put the deck box in your bag and then just keep your housing discs in your pocket or in a zippered thing in your bag, you are more than welcome to it. Now, a couple more notes on this groove in the back. The housing will only fit one way, bottom edge aligning with the bottom of the deck, so it looks very nice. Additionally, the designer has said that they are planning some additional products that could be similarly attached to the deck box, but have different functions. Now, going back to how this was generally intended for precons, you will be able to hold about a full-sleeved precon deck and the assorted tokens that usually come with that. Specifically, you can get 50 single-sleeved cards in each compartment with room for about 5 or so unsleeved cards. So your deck, a few tokens, and maybe a couple extra sleeves, but not much more. And the designer does have an option for a few bucks more that will accommodate double-sleeved cards. But even then, it'll pretty much be just the double-sleeved cards, a couple tokens, and maybe a few extra sleeves. Now, we already mentioned how the sliding lid forms a very secure lock, but this entire deck box is actually really protective of your cards, with the exception of the art window. It's a relatively bulky deck box for holding just a single commander deck, but in this case, that's a good thing, because the walls of this deck box are thick as heck. They are super sturdy. For reference, a boulder's walls are about 3.5 millimeters all around. The QuickDraw, the longer side, are about 8 millimeters thick, which is over 2 times the thickness of a boulder. One of the side walls is also 8 millimeters, but the side with the locking mechanism is about 24 millimeters. And even with all the cards out, it has that single divider separating the main compartments. There's no budge or give in this deck box at all. So I can safely say that this deck box, outside of the art window, will protect your cards from any thinkable, reasonable damage. And no, don't take a flamethrower to this and be like, oh, cardboard, you said it would protect my cards. Shut up, nerd. This ranks incredibly highly on the fidgetability scale, which is an official thing. You've got the namesake QuickDraw release button with the sliding lid. You have the life counter hub with the deck box. You have the hub by itself and the life counter by itself. There's just a lot of fun to be had with this deck box. And I keep going back to how well this deck box feels in your hand and how it really takes advantage of those thick walls to provide these extra grips and holds. Now we get to the most important question. Who is this for? Well, first and foremost, this is not an all-in-one solution. Assuming you are even using a pre-con and the provided tokens, you're probably also going to want some dice or counters, so that means you'll need to use this deck box in some sort of larger ecosystem, being a bag or a big case or something. It's about as thick as I would mostly want for a flat deck box, but it is still thin enough for book bags, thin purses, messenger bags, satchels, or laptop bags. It's a good conversation piece, and it looks good sitting out on a shelf. And most importantly, to me, this is a great evolution in the normal person bag deck boxes for, well, normal people. It does all of those things, it does it well, it does it stylishly, and it does it all with the click of a button. Thank you for watching, and thank you to all my Patreon and YouTube members. If you like seeing unique products being reviewed, feel free to join. It's only like $3 and helps keep me buried in molded plastic. If you think this particular deck box wasn't to your liking, check out this playlist where I review all kinds of under-the-radar gaming equipment. Feel free to like the video. If you liked it, feel free to subscribe to the channel for more. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you around.